So you convinced these Hulu people.
Yeah, I convinced the Hulu people
and now,
somehow.
And then we're like, we're going to make a movie. And then they're like, oh,
Well,
it's
yeah.
this virus.
We were like fully prepping. Our shoot date was like March 15th, 2020. We were ready to go. And yeah, we got shut down, which was very depressing for me, but like also, were we going to survive? What was going to happen? The whole world was,
there were bigger
it was
fish.
very crazy. And then sometime in June, we got totally shut down. And so in May, Mark was like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't know. I'm sitting in my house. What are you doing? And he's like, I had this germ of an idea. What do you think of it? He's like, I've been taking Spanish classes online. And I thought maybe we could make a movie about that. And I was like, okay. And so we wrote it. We didn't know what it was going to be, but we were like, let's figure this out. And we shot it in 4 afternoons in like one night.
The whole film?
The whole film. Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Welcome to More Than a Movie, a podcast that gives you a behind-the-scenes look at your favorite movies. I'm your host, Alex Fumero. Last season, we did a deep dive on American Me. This season, I'll focus on a different movie each episode, feature interviews with the biggest actors, directors, writers, and producers behind them, and tap into the history of Latinos in film. It's 2021, and the world is shut down by COVID. A lot of us get really good at baking bread and killing plants. But my guest today had a much busier year than most. In fact, she did something that I've kind of never heard of before. She had a dual directorial debut. It's kind of like when back in the day people would release double albums, like The Wall by Pink Floyd or Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. Except Natalie Morales is a lot less emo than Billy Corgan, and from what I've heard, a lot easier to work with. I asked her here today to talk about those two movies, Language Lessons and Plan B, and how the fuck she managed to make 2 movies in 1 year. Hi.
Hi. I'm Natalie. Hi.
Hi, Natalie.
What's up?
You and I have some things in common.
We do.
You're from Miami.
Yes.
I'm also from Miami. Where
Yes.
did you grow up in Miami?
Westchester.
Oh,
Huechete.
Huechete.
Or the Sahuacera.
I spent a lot of time there.
Like, listen, whoever is updating my IMDb, not my IMDb, my Wikipedia, which I don't know who it is and I don't know how to do it, says Kendall. And so everyone thinks I'm from Kendall and I'm not from Kendall.
So you're growing up in Westchester. Was it like from a little girl you wanted to be an actress?
No.
No,
I didn't know even that I could.
Right.
I mean, I think there was always a performance aspect to me. I used to do magic for my family. I used to make them sit and watch me do magic. And I remember begging my mom, I saw like something for an audition for some kids show. I don't know if it was a live show, a play. I don't know what it was. But I saw a poster somewhere that said like kids show, auditions, whatever. And I begged my mom to take me. And then my mom's not a show mom. She was like, okay, it's at this time. We'll go there. And they were like, okay, what song are you going to sing? And I was like, what? And they were like, did you not prepare any song? And I was standing on this stage and I think I was like 7 or 8. And I didn't know that you had to, I didn't know. I had no idea. I just was like, I'm here. What do you want me to do? I'm funny with my family. And they were like, okay, you don't have anything prepared. And they told me some Spanish song that I didn't know. And then they were like, okay, why don't you just sing I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston? And I was like, oh, just that? Okay. And of course I didn't remember it and botched it. I was like 7. I'm not a singer.
You didn't hit the high note on that one? Oh,
and they were like, okay, thanks. And I remember that being like, I guess I'm not a performer. I guess that's not for me. But that was like the extent of it when I was a kid. Yeah.
What a way to like almost ruin your entire life.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I know.
like I just set the bar super low.
high. Yeah.
Exactly. And then so I read that you eventually go to a high school that has like a performing arts program or a component
No, just
to
a
it.
drama class. I went to Southwest.
Went to Southwest.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. What high school did you go to?
I went to Ransom Everglades
Oh,
School.
yes, you did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all wore ascots. So you went to Southwest, but like you did productions there.
Yeah, they did. I was never cast in anything. I mean, that's not true. Not for a while. Not for a long time.
Uh-huh.
I had to beg to be cast in things. I was never cast in anything at FIU when I was at FIU Theater ever.
So like, do you have formal training or are you just one of those horribly obnoxious people with innate talent?
Training in what?
Filmmaking.
It's going to be the latter, but
Filmmaking.
no, I don't. Other than
Acting, I feel like you could just be talented. But like filmmaking, there's like a lot of elements to that that are technical.
Yeah.
So when do you start to learn those elements?
It was really just being on set as an actor and just paying attention and watching. And honestly, reading books and being a really big Buster Keaton fan and learning a lot about the history of film. And yeah, I just like for so long was like always asking questions on every department of why they did things and what they did things. And there's still a lot I don't know. And I'm like, I don't need to know that. Like there's things that I'm like, you got that. I'm focusing on this other stuff and I'm fine with it. I don't really feel like my lack of knowledge in some technical parts that are not my department prohibits me from directing well.
I mean, clearly not.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And but people will make you feel that way. People will make you feel that way, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're young, especially if you didn't go to film school. And I really think that like good directing, it doesn't mean that you know every single lens and exactly what it looks like without looking through. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like that, it doesn't mean that. It's a lot more to it, but
it's a craft. And it sounds like you learned not only by doing, but also by just being on set and being curious.
Observing, yeah.
Talk to me about those early, I mean, you were on some pretty cool shows fairly early on, right? Eventually, I mean, like Parks and Rec, you know, but there's like The Grinder, Santa Clarita Diet, films like Wall Street Money Never Sleeps.
Yeah, please.
So you're on these sets with incredibly talented people, I mean, including fucking Oliver Stone. Talk us, for someone that doesn't know how the evolution of an acting career works, how did you go from someone who wasn't getting roles at FIU to like suddenly you're on Parks and Rec?
Bravado.
Just walk in and you're like,
yeah.
Fuagada.
Fuagada,
yeah.
Indeed. Bravado. I will say that bravado has gotten me a lot in my life, but I really did have like a, why not? Why not me? And then I really did fake it till I made it, I guess. I lied up and down on my resume. Anything I could exaggerate on my resume, I did. I was like, I just need to get in the door. Once I'm there, I can do the thing. But if anything's going to prevent me from getting in that door that I could change, that no one's going to double check, why not do it? Sure, I can parachute. Sure, I can ice skate. Sure, why not? I never got those jobs, but I think everyone does that on their resume. But yeah, my best friend Serena and I moved out here. She's still my writing partner and my performing partner and, you know, my life partner in many ways. But we moved out here together and I had this really absurd sense of confidence where I was like, okay, we get out there. Within a month, we'll have agents. And then in another month, we'll be on TV and then it'll be fine. And it didn't exactly work out that way, but I did book the first thing I ever auditioned for. The first audition I did was a McDonald's commercial, and I booked it, which really kind of was like, hey, this mentality is not far off. You're going to do this.
Coming up, Natalie Morales tells us how Bravado took her from selling mattresses on Craigslist to starring in her own TV show on NBC. One thing Bravado can't do, though, is get rid of commercials. Nope. We'll be putting those in these podcasts until Mr. iHeart says I've paid him back for that thing I owe him. Until then, we'll be right back. Welcome back. We're talking with Natalie Morales about her start in Hollywood and how she landed her first leading role on a show created by Mike Schur, the same guy who did The Office, Parks and Rec, and The Good Place.
So yeah, I mean, I did have lots of weird jobs for a long time. I was a bartender and a waiter and I sold mattresses on Craigslist and I took headshots of people. Like I was like...
Hey, you hustled.
Yeah, I hustled a lot. And then, yeah, just did commercials and I got my like first guest star spot. And then I got this show called The Middleman, which was a huge break for me. And also was a thing where I was like, this is mine. Like I saw that come in and I was like, this is mine. And I was like, there's no way I'm not getting this. And I felt that way about a few roles. I felt that way about Abby's too, where I was like, obviously a role named Abby was not written for a Latina woman or me.
No.
But I was like, that is mine. That is a new Mike Schur show. I am taking this. I am auditioning for this. This is mine.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, well, first, I really want to talk about Abby. But
sure.
I also want to talk about roles that are quote unquote meant for you, right? You've talked in interviews about having a feeling of having to like neutralize your accent. I ask about that because I feel like there was a time in Hollywood, and maybe it's still going on, maybe it isn't, and maybe that's something that you can talk about, but there was very much a time where like hiding your identity, almost trying to find proximity to whiteness.
Well,
right?
yeah, no,
if
but
you could, if
that's
you had
definitely something I discovered. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's definitely something I realized about myself, honestly, in 2020. I had this huge realization that I had been unconsciously or consciously sort of like code switching and making myself palatable. And honestly, to be kinder to myself, it was the only way to get a job. Even though like I knew that there were people from my community who are funnier than me, who are more brilliant than I am. But I would look at them and I'd go, you're dumb because you're not doing what they want you to do and you're not going to get this job. And instead of going, oh, the people that are casting don't have the breadth of experience to know that these people are funnier and better and more interesting, because always the people that are casting are white. And, you know, I knew comedy and I knew specifically like how to land the joke in the way that they wanted. Is it necessarily the way that I would do it? Is it my comedy? Did I lose some of myself in that? For sure. Did I wear the color red ever to an audition for the first like 12 years of me being here? No, because I thought I looked too Latina. No hoop earrings, no red. Specifically because I didn't want to get typecast and I don't fit into the types that Latinas were cast in. I was like, okay, how can I be this more palatable version of a Latino? I think that there are people who can get away with being absolutely themselves and uncompromising and still sneak into these like great comedies, but it is so rare.
It is.
And you can't do it if you're not playing some big character. And I was like, I want to be the girl in this. I want to be whatever I can do in this. And to do that, I have to know what they want. And what they want isn't authentically me, but I'm an actor, so I'm going to do it anyway because I know what they want. And it was this really weird realization that I had because I felt sad about it. And I felt that it was something that was necessary for me to do in order to get to where I am. And that also was necessary for me to realize I was doing it so that I could stop doing it now that I feel like I am well known enough, at least among my peers. And by the way, it's not a huge difference. I'm not putting on a voice right now. This is how I actually talk. But like I wear red and I wear hoop earrings all the time. And I'm like,
you're wearing red right now.
Yes, I am wearing red right now. And I'm wearing hoop earrings. And I'm not afraid to be, you know, quote unquote, too Latina, because that's not a thing for me or for anybody. And I want to sort of Trojan horse that into Hollywood and into the roles that I've had. I've like snuck in here and been like in all these mainstream comedies as the, you know, happens to be Latina actor, right?
So that's kind of what I want to talk about is like in that Trojan horsing, you find your way in. How then do you go, okay, we wrote this role, Abby, for someone who is not like me. I would like this to be more like me. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, the people that I worked with on that show were awesome. And Josh Malmuth and Mike Schur, like, were so responsive to making this character real. For example, there's an episode where they find Abby's mail and they realize what her real name is. Because again, Abigail is not a name you would really hear, but if you did for Cubans, that's how it would be pronounced, which is awful. So they had written this storyline about her dad and her having a fraught relationship with her dad. And I was like, I love the idea that he named her after himself. And he has arguably one of the funniest Cuban names, which is Abelardo. And I was like, if her name is Abelarda, that's so funny to me. And I think that that's a hilarious name to find out that your friend Abby is named Abelarda, which is what we named it. They were awesome. And I did audition for the part. It wasn't written for me, nor was it offered to me. But I think once they pictured me in it, they wanted to make it as me as possible. And they also saw it in the same way that I did, which is like, it's just one part of her. Just like the character was also bi. It was the first bi lead character of a show, openly bi. And it was like, that was just one part of her. She's also a veteran. That's just one part of her. But mostly she's just Abby, a friend to these people at this bar. And I'm glad that they saw it like that, because I think so often, especially honestly, when it's white creators of a show making a show about Latinx people or about non-white people, the stereotyping and the like extraness of like how to overdo the Latinidad of them is grating to me.
Absolutely.
So I'm very glad that they saw it like I did.
Do you feel like, I mean, the show was canceled, unfortunately.
Yes.
And I've heard Cristela Alonso talk about this. I've heard other people talk about like, they make these shows and then they don't necessarily get the same promotional support.
Oh, they did. It just got no promotional support. So the person who bought the show, the president of NBC at the time, left, and then 2 new people came in, and they didn't want the stuff that the old guy bought, so they kind of like buried it and let it die, essentially. As like they couldn't immediately cancel something Mike Schur did, but that was it. They didn't give it a shot. Yeah.
So I'm curious. So you have this imaginably frustrating experience being the lead actor of a show. Did this in any way kind of drive you to focus more on wanting to be behind the camera and making your own work, directing, writing, controlling that aspect of it?
I mean, I always wanted to do that. I was always working towards that, but certainly it did. And then 2020 happened.
Yeah.
but yeah, it's always been part of the plan. I think, I was directing before that. I started directing
some short films,
music videos and Funny or Die stuff. And then I did TV. I did some episodes of Room 104 on HBO before Abby's. So I was already going in that direction, but certainly this made me go like, okay, what else can I do here? Although like, I don't want to be an executive at a studio. I don't want to be a studio head. I want to create things. But what we need is people.
But how do we get from that kind of state of like, I'm directing TV, I'm sort of propelling myself towards a directing career to like, finally I'm attached to a project that I'm excited about?
Yeah. So I got the script for Plan B and I was like, there's something really good in here. And I think I could make, and it was all honestly the first script that I got to consider to direct, the very first one. And I had never gotten anything like that. It was like, you have to meet with the producers. And I told my agents and my manager, I was like, I don't have the experience for this. This is a big movie. And it was going to be Hulu's first theatrical release, actually. And so they were like, just take the meeting. It's good for you to meet them. Even if you're not like qualified, maybe they'll remember you for the next thing or, keep you in mind. And they met with me before I went in. I was like, there's no way I'm going to get this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say everything I would actually do and like really pitch it. And it's critical of what's here, but it's hopeful of what could be here. And like, I have ideas for it that aren't necessarily what they want to do. And I have other things. And it was like a really high reaching thing where I just kind of went into this meeting like, hi, here's what I think, and here's what I would do, and here's, why I think I would be good at this, and here's how I see these very specific things, and here's how I think the comedy should be. And it's a subject matter that is like a hard R comedy dealing with something actually very serious and very real in America, which is like lack of access to contraception for women and women's rights in this country. And I was like, here's how I think it could work. Here's how I think we could give people sugar with their medicine and not preach to the choir and not make it like this. And I left there and I was like, okay. And then they called me right after and told me I got the job, which blew me away. And I was like, what? This is crazy.
So this time you're before you're like, I'm going to get that job.
Yeah, I did not think I was going to get this job.
This time you were like, no. But still bravado, right?
Well, I just was like, I risk nothing by telling them everything I think because I'm not going to get this is what I thought. So then they had to pitch me to Hulu as somebody. And so I was terrified of that.
Which is really hard because when you're talking to network execs, they're the most risk averse people on the planet.
Yes.
And they're like, so you want us to give like a couple $1 million or however, I don't know how big the budget was, to someone who's never directed a feature film before?
I think before COVID, it was like $8 million.
An $8 million movie to Natalie Morales.
Who's never directed a feature
We love
before.
her. We love Natalie.
Yeah.
We love her. She's a fantastic
actress.
It's
like, who?
Is
the
there,
woman from the Today Show?
Is there someone maybe who, I don't know, have you considered this white guy?
So I had to sit at this table terrified meeting all these people who then became very lovely and friendly and wonderful to me and had to pitch myself again to Hulu. And somehow I made that happen. I don't know why. I don't know why. I think that was more like, okay, we trust you, John and Hayden.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you convinced these Hulu people.
Yeah, I convinced the Hulu people.
And now,
somehow.
And then we're like, we're going to make a movie. And then they're like, oh, it's this virus.
We were like fully prepping. Our shoot date was like March 15th, 2020. We got shut down the Friday before the Monday when we were going to start. And like, people's hair had been bleached. Houses had been painted.
Yeah.
We were ready to go. And we got shut down, which was very depressing for me. But like also, were we going to survive? What was going to happen? The whole world was,
there were bigger fish.
It was very crazy. And then sometime in June, we got totally shut down. And so in May, which was, I guess, exactly 3 years ago now, Mark was like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't know. I'm sitting in my house. What are you doing? He's like, I had this germ of an idea. What do you think of it? He's like, I've been taking Spanish classes online. And I thought maybe we could make a movie about that. And I was like, okay. And he was like, do you speak Spanish? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, all right. And I was like, what else you got? He's like, I don't have anything else. I was like, okay. And so we wrote it and then like shot it within like a month and shot it very experimentally. Like we didn't know what it was going to be, but we were like, let's figure this out. And we shot it in 4 afternoons in like one night.
The whole film?
The whole film. Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Which is also such a Duplass thing.
Such a Duplass thing. Yes. Yeah. I mean, the first episode that I shot of Room 104 was a 2 days shoot.
Wow.
Which was crazy. I mean, when you watch Language Lessons, you'll know why we were able to do it in 4 afternoons. But yeah, I was alone in my house, making it. And it was really fun. It was really crazy. So then while I was editing Language Lessons, which was more of a feat to edit than you might think, because there's only 2 shots in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Then Plan B came back and I was like, really? How? How are we going to, what? How are we going to do that? That doesn't make any sense. We're like the first production coming back. And so then I was filming Plan B in the fall of 2020 and editing Language Lessons on the weekend. Sometimes I think I did a reshoot too on the weekends from the Plan B set. And then Language Lessons went to Berlin and South by Southwest and came out that way. And then Plan B came out on Hulu in May. And then Language Lessons came out in movie theaters right after. So they're very simultaneous. They're like very helixy, double helixy simultaneous.
Oh, yeah. It's your Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness.
Yes.
I mean, it's the wall.
But people are always like, it was very confusing. And they didn't know which one was my directorial debut. And I was like, I guess it depends where you count. Like, do you count when we started? Or do you count when we finished? Do you count festivals? Do you count which one the public saw first?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Hola.
I'm sorry, who are you? What are you doing in my house?
You're so dead.
You are such a drama queen.
I'm mad. I won't. Who are you again?
I'm your Spanish teacher.
So I have to speak Spanish for 1 day.
Well, I actually bought the 100 lesson package.
Will, did you buy me 100 Spanish lessons?
Yeah,
Why?
because you wanted to learn Spanish, dummy.
Oh.
That was a clip from the trailer to Language Lessons, written by and starring Mark Duplass and Natalie Morales, and directed by Natalie at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. I asked Natalie to walk me through the difficulties of directing your first film at a time when getting together with your team is impossible. So I'd love to dig into Language Lessons a little bit. Can you walk me through a little bit? Like, I'm fascinated by the writing process. Mm-hmm. So he comes to you with this kind of loose idea.
Yeah.
I mean, that story it's about much more than just Language Lessons.
Yes.
So how do you come up with that?
So we tried this thing. I had this idea for how to start writing it that I really like, and I'm going to keep doing it for other things, which is that we knew we were going to play these 2 characters. I was going to be the teacher. He was going to be this guy. And that's all we knew. We didn't know where the story was going to go. We didn't know where the conflict would come. We kind of knew we didn't want it to be romantic. And we were like, how can we make these characters collide in a way that's interesting besides just taking lessons? And so I was like, I think here's the first step, Mark. Why don't we both go off separately, just knowing only that about each other and about our characters, and write a bio of our characters without discussing it with each other. And then we'll come back and share those bios. And where those things like butt heads is where we'll find something to do. And that's what we did. So we each went off and wrote who our characters were. And I just kind of like let something come to me. And I named it after a friend of mine who had died of COVID. And I just kind of let whatever inspiration came to me about this character come. And then we came together and we tweaked a little bit, but that inspired the rest of the story, really. And we shot the end first before we finished the script. I didn't know what was going to happen in the middle, but I knew that I wanted it to end that way. But we wanted to keep it as real feeling as possible. So then we would improvise around those things for a lot of the scenes as well.
We're going to hear one of my favorite scenes from this film. The scene where she calls him
drunk
in the middle of the night.
You're nice. I like talking to you. You're always trying to get me to talk to you.
and it was a little suspect at first, but then, I don't know, I guess you're just a nice person. Who knew those existed?
Can I tell you a secret?
Yeah?
It's really nice to listen to you talk.
First of all, you play an excellent drum.
Thank you.
To the point where I was like, did you get a little drunk?
No.
No.
Thank you.
But how much of that was improvised? Because it felt so flowing and free, and it really felt off the cuff. So how much of that was improvised? And then can you talk a little bit just about improvisation versus sticking to the script?
You know, what's funny is that's the one evening that we shot besides the 4 afternoons, right? And we wrote that scene that afternoon. We did not know what was going to happen in that scene. And I would say that scene is probably like 70% written, 30% improv. And I think for me and Mark, what we share really, and we get along so well professionally, we're both lit up by these ideas, although we work really differently. He and I really like to get to the truth of something, and we're not scared to go there with each other, and we're not scared of what the other person might think. And also, I think he and I both know that we'll never fake it. We'll never go like, yeah, that sounds good. Because if I don't like it, I'll say I don't like it, and he will say the same thing, which is a great way to work with someone. Because you know that they are truly excited by something. And so for us, the improving was just getting, because it's not necessarily like what you think of as improv in like a comedic way. It's just like, you know, someone says something and you respond. And much of it is dramatic. But yeah, that scene in particular was, I think, mostly written and somewhat like just a little in-betweens, a little like something to bring it life. And
yeah.
And
how did you decide which scenes would be more sort of set in that way and which ones would be more free?
The ones that are, particularly because Mark knows some Spanish, but not a lot.
It's pretty fucking good.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah.
We really wrote those out, the lesson ones where he's like learning more. It was kind of like really structured, and then all the bits in between were improvised, you know?
But it also sounds like maybe the pace at which you wrote and then performed sort of still added some of that like vitality to it.
Yeah.
Because it's like you don't really have that much time to like polish and edit and rethink.
Yeah.
Right?
And we also, with the openness and freeness of trying anything, like you said, that pace of writing it and then almost immediately performing it was like just testing out what you were writing. You know, it was like if 2 actors are writing something, they kind of like act it out while they're writing it anyway. So that was what it was. It was a really fascinating experiment also because it was like, you know, very virtual most of the time. So it was interesting.
Natalie's character in the movie, Cariño, is really charming and nice on the surface. But she also has this darker side that she's very protective of, especially when Mark Duplass's character, Adam, starts to pry.
What?
Okay. What's the narrative you've created?
I don't have a narrative I've created because I don't.
I'm
I
an
only get-
adorable little free spirit with an abusive ex-husband. Is that it?
I don't know because you don't share with me. I only have bits and pieces, but
Because you're not my friend. You're my student. I don't need to share anything with you except for some verbs in Spanish.
You know, I've read you write that you don't love talking about your personal life or didn't for like a long time, that you're not interested in fame, but that you seem to be more of a private person. Cariño is similar, right? Like she's holding back the whole time and you can feel it, you know? Is that something that you brought to the story sort of consciously?
I think we were really aware of making like a white savior story. At least I was. and Mark became aware of that also. And so we really wanted to subvert that in a way and go like, she's aware of that. And she's also mistrustful of people and men and rich people. I'm mistrustful of rich people, so that probably comes from me. But she's also right. Like, she also doesn't owe this person anything. And he's just her student. I liked exploring the kind of thing of like, a relationship or a friendship only happens if you actually give into it. And she's well within her rights to be like, you're just my student. Back the fuck up. Like, I'm sorry that I happened to catch you after your husband died, but it doesn't mean we're best friends. I was just there for you like a decent human. Don't attach yourself to me like that, you know? But does she give into that side of herself that is soft, that wants that connection with him?
And that will allow herself to be helped, right? Because
Right.
that's what I think makes it for such a great dramatic premise and scene.
Yeah.
Is that you have the other actor also making great points, right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
not that scene where it's just like the inverse of the white savior, where you have like the wise brown person who's going to tell you how it is. He's like, no, quit that bullshit. You don't want help. You
Yeah.
don't want to let me in.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And
Yeah.
it's going to kill you.
Yeah, I think that, you know, for women in particular, at least for me, but the optics of a situation are always important.
Yeah.
And the optics have to do with your own experience. I think the scariest thing for a woman is trusting that a man will help her in the way that she needs to be helped.
Yeah.
That's very, very scary. Like, it literally is so scary to go, okay, I relinquish everything.
Fuck.
It's up to you. And the reason that is scary is from experience.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, I don't mean anything against you. I just mean it is scary. And I think especially like with a strange white rich man who lives in another country, why the fuck would she trust that? You know, and I think it also gives her depth, because I was like, you don't know what she's been through before
Yeah.
that moment. And I think that so many people have these assumptions of like little sweet Latina women, and that they are, you know,
It's either that or they're complete, like, just blowtorches.
right. And I think that, you know, if she's like this teacher who wears braids in her hair and wears little flowers on her clothes, you kind of assume that she's a sweetheart. And I liked the idea that she was like a drunk who like didn't give a fuck. And as a writer or as a creator, I'm interested in the things that I haven't seen a bunch of times, and characters that might connect to people that haven't seen themselves on screen before.
That's evident in
Yeah.
your work. And yet I love that it never feels preachy,
Thank you.
because I think it can, right?
Yeah.
It's actually really hard to not make it sound preachy, because
Yeah.
like, I want to talk about this stuff. But like,
Yeah.
how do you, is it something you're cognizant of going in, directing and writing?
Completely.
Yeah.
So cognizant of
How
it.
do you fight against it?
Anxiety. I hate things that are preachy. I hate things that preach to the choir. I don't need to see things
Preach.
that isolate people. You know, I've talked to my friends about this, which is like a heady question, but I have these like lists of questions on my phone that I just ask people when we're bored,
Oh,
that I just like
interesting.
write down. And one of the questions is, what is your purpose? Like, what do you think you're here to do?
Yeah.
And if I really think about it, what I really boil it down to is that one of the things I feel really called to do, that's always a primary important thing to me, is to make this group of people understand this group of people, and vice versa. I want to facilitate connection, which is so important in the last few years. It's really tested that for me, is that I know that we are more connected than we are divided. And so that is always what I'm thinking of. I'm always going like, I don't want to just be like, I'm only talking to the people who agree with me. I'm talking to everybody. And there are points all around that need to be talked about and said. There are points that I agree with and there are points that I don't agree with, but there's still people and there's still a way of thinking. And so that's how I try to fight it. How I do it in movies is I really make sure that the actors and the characters feel real. They would react the way that anybody would react. And so then they can go on all series of adventures, because life itself has different tones. And life itself is tragic and funny and sad and weird and sexy and all those things at once. So I really do believe that they can all be in one movie, because one day of your life can be all those things, you know? And,
Yeah.
and as long as I know that that character feels real, then I know I can get away with everything.
Plan B is full of this kind of realness, for better and for worse. This next clip from the movie represents an all too real experience teenage girls across the country are still facing today, especially since the repeal of Roe v. Wade.
Okay, what can I do for you, my dear?
I need the Plan B pill. I love you.
The Plan B pill. Do you have any ID?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, you're 17. I'm sorry, but I decline to offer you the Plan B pill. Have a nice day.
What? Why? You can't do that.
Yes, I can. It's a little thing called the conscience clause. I'm sorry, but my hands are tied, morally speaking.
Lupe, played brilliantly by Victoria Morales, deals with fears of coming out as queer.
Yes.
And a conservative Christian family.
Yeah.
In 2017, you wrote a piece for Smart Girls,
Mm-hmm.
Amy Poehler's website, coming out publicly, at least, as queer. Can we talk about what that moment meant for you and what sort of the reaction of your people was back home?
So I was out to everybody for many, many years that were my friends and people out in LA. And I was just living my life normally. My mom didn't know, and like my family really didn't know. But I didn't think they needed to unless I don't know. I had this idea that I was like, oh, unless I really end up in a very serious long-term relationship with a woman or with someone who's not a man, then I'll tell them. And I had instances where I came sort of close to it, but it never got there. But really the reason I did it was because I was promoting this movie, Battle of the Sexes, where I played Rosie Casals, who was as open as you can be about being a lesbian in the 70s, and who was Billie Jean King's doubles partner. And this movie is about Billie Jean King discovering her sexuality. And I was about to do all this press for it, and I felt so disingenuous being like, I'm an ally. And I felt just kind of like, it's my personal life. No one needs to know who I'm dating. And then I thought about myself as a kid and Latino people and just stuff that I had gone through and been like, I wish that I had someone to point to my family and be like, she's fine. She's doing okay. Nothing bad's happening to her. She seems stable and like good, and she's living her life, and that's okay. And so I thought, okay, I'm not going to tell people who I'm dating, but I'm going to be open about this because I think if it helps anybody, a child, a parent, a friend, anybody to feel a little more understood or a little more understanding, then it's worthwhile. And it'll also relieve me from feeling disingenuous when I talk about queer things, which I think are increasingly more important to talk about and to normalize.
You're creating connection, which is something.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I wrote that, and before it was published, like the week before it was published, I sent it to my family. And that's how they found out.
Via email?
I was like, I'm sending you something you need to read. And they all were so supportive. Without sounding preachy and like self-serving, I hope. I've gotten so many responses to that throughout the years. I still get people writing to me, parents and kids writing to me about that and talking about like what it did for them. Some people were like, I made my parents read this and then I came out to them.
Yeah.
And some people were like, I'm never going to come out to my family, but I'm glad someone gets what I'm going through. And some people were like, I live in New York. This is not even an issue anymore. And I was like, well, you don't understand the rest of the world, maybe. When people make LGBTQ queer media or characters like that, I think in LA and New York, we're kind of like, is it that crazy to come out to your parents? That's like what happened in Plan B. Like, I feel like so many people feel like it's old news and they don't consider the rest of America and how it is still crazy for a lot of people. And also the rest of the world. It's not super acceptable anywhere. Uganda just criminalized it.
Yeah.
So like it is continuously important to, like you said, provide that connection to people and talk about it and be an example of it, I think. Yeah.
So how do these personal experiences influences some of the characters in Plan B, the father, right? Like,
yeah.
The writing is sort of one thing, and I'm curious at how you get that into the script. But when you're directing, right? When you're directing Lupe, how do you communicate these things? How do you have these discussions? How do you communicate them? How do you bring those to life in scene?
I think it was, I'll be very candid. I wrote all of Lupe because we had to recast. It was Sunny and Ling Ling. It was an Asian character. And so we recast because we lost our actress in COVID. She's fine. She just had another job.
Yeah.
And she's wonderful. But we cast Victoria and she was incredible. But they were like, we don't have any money to hire a new writer and you're Latina. And so I wrote all of Lupe. Like you couldn't tell.
Yeah, it's not surprising.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. So I think that it was on the page. And I think that, Victoria is incredible. And really, there's two parts in that movie. There's a few parts in that movie that always make me cry. Still, Sunny asking for her mom. Lupe talking to Logan in the car and going like, fuck it, I'm just going to kiss you. It's such an expression of joy that I know so many people like desired and wanted.
And she's so dynamic and charming.
Yeah.
That like when she says it, you're like rooting for her.
Yeah. You're really rooting for her. And then when her dad says nice pin to her, it wasn't in the script. And at the last minute, I was like, hey, can you just say this real quick and just say it? Because I just want to see if it'll work. And then it like breaks my heart because it kind of leaves it open if you're like, does he know what that means? I think he knows what that means. And he's kind of leaving the door open for her whenever she might want.
Let's listen to a little bit of that heartfelt interaction between them. I think you kind of have to hear it to understand why it's so special.
Hey, Dad?
Yeah?
Promise me you'll never kick me out.
What? What do you mean? Why would I do that?
I don't know. Just, sometimes parents do that.
Oh, mija. You're my little loquita. It's not my job to judge you. It's my job to be your dad, no matter what.
I love you, Dad.
I love you too, mija. Nice pen.
It just meant a lot to me. Like I said before, to just show parents that it actually could be this easy. You actually could be accepting. And the same thing for the Sunny storyline when, she's so scared that her mom is going to be so upset with her. And her mom's like, wait, someone said no to you? No. Like she's like, you're still in trouble, but I'm going to protect you. And I'm going to fight for you. That was more important to me than, I think there's so many sob stories about minorities.
Of course.
And I didn't want this to be one of them.
Yeah. And to show that there's like a possible model for how to deal with these things without ignoring the obstacles.
Right.
Coming up, I asked Natalie Morales about representation and how sometimes just keeping things very personal is all you need. For example, I personally did not want to make you listen to an ad, but I also very personally like to get paid. So listen to this commercial and we'll be right back. We're back with more from my interview with Natalie Morales, and we're talking about what it's like to direct a teen comedy led by two women of color. So teen comedies or like teen kind of sex comedies is like it's like a subgenre, but it's rare to see like a female-led teen. I mean, you have like Mean Girls, Clueless, Booksmart, but like in this one, what stands out to me is you have two,
non-white girls. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Two minority leads, however you want to describe it. And I think this is the happy accident maybe of the casting issue that you had is that they end up being from vastly different backgrounds. I mean, look, South Asian and East Asian are different things.
Yeah.
But it's like you have a Latina of a Mexican background and you have an Indian American and they're best friends and they're both children of immigrants. You obviously know how to and did navigate the complexities of Lupe's character. But when you're going into a culture that's not your own and you want to represent it well, like how do you sort of address that,
Well, the writers of the script, one of them, Prathi, was Indian. So she wrote Sunny very much after her own experience. But then also I really conferenced with Kuhu and with anybody else who was South Asian and was like, does this feel real to you? Like, does it feel authentic? Would it make, your people laugh or would it feel like stereotypical, Like how do you feel about this? I think that's really important to do.
So you're the Mike Shore.
Yeah.
So back to talking about the teen comedy element. So a lot of these classics in this genre, there's like, they throw a crazy party. There's like getting the date to prom, losing your virginity. The stakes and like the driving force of this movie are a little more political.
Yeah.
Right. But they're still grounded in these very real teen situations. When you're thinking about the story and the scenes, like, how do you just balance like, okay, we're talking about kind of macro political ideas and interpersonal ideas. How do you strike that balance? Is it sort of intuitive or?
Yeah. People are not macro political, right? You make it very personal and all these issues reach these people personally, but also thinking about it on a broader scale, all these movies that you talked about for the most part are set in LA or New York or somewhere wealthy and the people have money and they're mostly white, right? And so I loved Booksmart. I really did love that movie, but it's very white and everyone's rich. And the biggest hurdle that they have to get over, the big problem in that movie, or the instigating thing in that movie, is that they studied really hard and didn't party in school so that they could get into a good college. But everybody else also got into a good college. And so they're like, now we have to actually party, which is fine. It's a valid concern. But I don't know that that is the concern of most teenagers in America.
Right.
I don't know that most teenagers in America are going like, oh, all my other rich friends got into a great school. I want to party. It's great to see on screen, but I was like, okay, this is a real concern. This is a thing that people actually need. And if they're in South Dakota, where this law is a real law, and this law is in many states where it's a conscience clause law, which means that like any pharmacist can deny you any medication based on their religious beliefs. So you just can't buy it anywhere. And if you live in a state that has a predominantly conservative culture that doesn't believe in that, you're going to have a hard time getting what you need. And that's not even talking about abortion, right? That's just talking about contraception.
Yeah.
Which has always baffled me that people who are against abortion are also against contraception. Makes no sense.
Yep.
But I love the idea of setting it not only with two girls who were not white, but in a place that wasn't coastal, that was the rest of America, where the parties are not at a fancy house. They're at like a bowling alley, and they don't have all the money in the world to solve these problems, and their problems are real. So it was like, how do we make, super bad, but instead of looking for alcohol, they're looking for the Plan B pill, and there's going to be reality in that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, look, congratulations, because I think you made an amazing movie.
Thank you.
It really makes me want to, see what you work on next.
Thank you. Thank you.
So yeah, Natalie Morales, thank you so much for being here. That's all we got this week for More Than a Movie. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, follow, like, review, all that stuff. And follow me on Instagram at AngryYuka. And tell your friends to listen. Finally, after hearing the word Zoot Suit so many times on this podcast, it starts to sound like your drunk uncle demanding to be taken to the zoo. We are going to talk about the OG play turned feature film that inspired the careers of half of Hispanic Hollywood. And we're talking to the legend who set it all off, activist and director Luis Valdez. More Than a Movie Season 2 was produced by Chloe Tagliagambe with the help of Reynolds Gutierrez and Veronica Hernandez in partnership with iHeart's My Cultura podcast network. Hosted by me, Alex Fumero. Edited by Rose Reed and Chloe Tagliagambe with the help of Saida Quevedo. Executive producers are Carmen Graterol, Rose Reed, Isaac Lee, and me, Alex Fumero. Sound design by Gonzalo Messi. Original music by Golden Minds, Darko, and IME. Recorded at JTB Studios and Vaudeville Sound. Our executive producers at iHeart are Giselle Bances and Arlene Santana. For more My Cultura podcasts, listen to the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your favorite shows.